Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode number 95. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard. And because we focused on solos last week, I thought we would focus on BigLaw this week. Now, you might not be in BigLaw, but even if you are in a smaller firm, a boutique, maybe even a mid-sized firm, this issue may still come up. And that is compensation. Compensation committees and the compensation process in general. Now, this generally does not affect associates, but it might, so you still might want to listen. It generally impacts partners for sure. And compensation can happen at different times depending on the firm where you are. But regardless of the actual process, it generally relates to year end. Now, some firms have different start and end dates, but this tends to be the time of year when either you are wrapping up your year end numbers that will impact your compensation, or you're actually going through the compensation process, including bonuses now or in January or even February. So I thought now was a really good time to go ahead and talk about it because in some sense you do need to prepare. So I didn't want to get the information to you right when it's happening. Hopefully it's not already passed you by, but you can always use this information to prepare for next year if you've already had your compensation for this year. But based on most of the firms I work with, that has probably not happened for you yet, and we are talking at just the right time. Okay, so before we begin, I just want to mention the elephant in the room, which is, BigLaw compensation is screwed up. It is just a jacked up process. And the way that we compensate attorneys, I think it just creates so many of the problems that we have in the legal industry. I think it is part of our culture, the workaholism, the being focused on, your output as opposed to your results. It's why, it's so competitive, and your own partners in your firm in many ways are your enemies. And it is a pie where everybody's trying to split it up, and it is not collaborative. It is not nice at all. You're not really partners in that moment. It doesn't take into consideration a lot of the value that so many people bring to the table because most compensation systems are focused on very specific behaviors, which again lead to really bad cultural problems within firms. And quite frankly, I think it's part of the problem with depression and suicide and alcohol and substance abuse. So I'm just putting that out there. I don't agree with the vast majority of compensation systems out there. Of course, it's really hard to just change a compensation system when you have people who are going to be greatly impacted at the top. Because if you fix compensation systems, if you change compensation systems, there will be losers. Okay? You can't just have winners. There will be losers. And, people are always afraid those people are going to walk. And so it is what it is. And unless you're starting your own firm or you really are shaking things up, we have to live with the compensation systems that are there. That said, some are better than others. And if you are in a compensation system that is never going to benefit you, I highly recommend that you consider another firm that will be better, even if not perfect for you. And if you think that you have got it as good as you're going to get it at your firm, or going to another firm is going to have the same problems, I want you to go back and listen to episode number 32. Not all firms are created equal. Okay? Yes, they all have problems, but some are going to be better for you. And we tell ourselves all kinds of stories around that. So if that's where you are, you can just go listen to that episode. But given the compensation system that you are in, given the structure that you're in, even if it is jacked up, you have to play the game if you want to get compensated, okay? And If you say, well, I just don't want to play the game, then that's fine. That's a decision that you can make, but you need to accept the consequences of that and not get resentful or bitter or hate your job because of it, because it's a decision that you've made. I'm also a firm believer that the more money you make, the more power you have. And those of you listening to my podcast are the kind of people that I want in power in the legal industry, in government, and in society in general, right? So if you are a woman, if you are a minority, if you fall in an underrepresented class of attorneys, or if you are a white dude that simply gets it and can help change the culture, I want you making money. I want you having power because that's what shifts things. And so oftentimes we say, well, I don't want to buy into that patriarchal masculine system because then I'm just, I'm giving in and I'm playing into the system. But the truth is, it's really hard to topple that without being a part of it and being in it initially. So the key is to play the game with the end, with the end in mind and to not fall into the trap of becoming one of them in the process. That is dangerous because I know you've seen it. I've seen it. Good people who otherwise get it, once they then get into that top tier status and they're making the money, suddenly become part of the problem. They become one of them and they are no longer on the side of let's change things and make it better. So know that you're playing the game, but make sure you do not become one of them, all right? You're going to be there to then change things and have a good influence on the system. All right, so that's why we're playing the game. The very first thing that you want to do as you are prepping for your compensation process is to know how your system works. Now, it could be that your firm clearly explains the process, but they might not. And it's important that you know if there's a formal system, and it's important for you to know, is there an informal system? So you may think you know, but I want you to make sure you know. So the first thing that I want you to do is look at your partnership agreement. Does it say anything in there about how compensation works? Look, these partnership agreements are crazy long, and you probably haven't read yours, right? Like any good attorney, we sign on to things that we've not actually read. So look at your partnership agreement and see what it says about compensation. And then I want you to go onto your intranet and look at whether you have an employee manual, a partnership manual, anything that explains the compensation system, including dates or how anything works. If you can't find anything, I then want you to go to the admin person that's going to have the answer. Now, sometimes you can just go to a practice group leader. Maybe you feel comfortable going to someone on the compensation committee or the management committee. But oftentimes you don't even need to do that. You just need to go to someone in admin. So maybe it's your CFO. Maybe it is your COO. They actually probably know more about the process than the people on the committee, right? Because they're the ones that are preparing all of the materials, the documents, and making sure that the committee has what they need. So that is always the best place to go. And this is why you should be making friends with everyone in the admin of your firm, okay? So you can go get that information. It's going to be more accurate. Then you want to know, is there an informal system that is not documented? Most compensation committees have a lot of flexibility and they have a lot of discretion in how they allocate money. And so what happened 10 years ago or even 2 years ago may not be what's going to happen this year if you've got a lot of different members on that committee. So at most firms, you will have some people that are carrying over and you also have new people. And so the new people, maybe they shake it up some, but for the most part, they are following to some degree what has been done before. But over time, it really can shift the philosophy around it. So I'm often talking about stories, right? We create stories in our heads, and law firms and legal industry as a whole, they tell us stories and we just buy into it and we don't ever challenge it. So if you think you know how compensation works at your firm or you've heard old stories, I want you to throw those out the window and go do your own research and make sure that it's current. So this is why it's also good to have access to people in the know in the firm. So go talk to someone that you think might be in the know, whether it is a practice group leader, someone on the compensation committee, whether it is someone in admin, and find out what's important for them that year and what they're going to be looking at. And if you feel uncomfortable having that conversation, then that means you probably don't have a good relationship with the people that are making the decisions. And you always want to have a relationship with the people making the decisions. And I get you may be in a firm that is huge, right? So if you've got over 1,000 attorneys in your firm, you might be like, there is no way I can create, a genuine relationship with every single person on the comp committee or the management committee, to which I say that is a mistake. You need to be building those relationships. Not just showing up at retreats, but anytime you're in their office, and make sure that you are in their office. It doesn't have to be every single one, but you need to make sure that you've got a good, solid relationship with at least a few, okay? And if that means, being in the city for some other reason and then just like grabbing lunch with them, you want to build a relationship so they know who you are and they know what you're doing, and so that you can have conversations around, why did you want to get on the compensation or management committee? And, what's important to you and what would you like to see? Because the truth is, most people, some of it's for egotistical reasons, but a lot of people truly want to have an impact and be a good influence and be a good steward. And so when you have these conversations, it often doesn't, we think that it's going to make them think that we're just in it for the money or greed or whatever else. But keep in mind, they're on the committee as well. And it actually shows that you care. It actually shows that you're thinking about it from a business perspective. So as soon as you start you start avoiding conversations because you're worried about what they will think, you have fallen in a trap, and the only person that you're hurting is yourself. Okay? Have these conversations. Now, if you're not really coming at it from a genuine place of trying to learn, and you're like really socially awkward, which I don't think is any of you, which means you just go straight in and say, okay, how do I make the most amount of money this year? Don't do that. But even then, even if you do that, it's probably not going to negatively impact you that much. Okay. So have these conversations just so that you know what's important to them. That's going to get to our points later. You also want to know if you have an open or closed system. If it is an open system and it's available year round, you want to look at people's compensation so that you can try to make correlations. And again, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. So with that, you know your system. The next thing that you want to do is you want to know your numbers and your stories. Okay. So you want to know basically by heart. You want to have memorized all of the numbers that matter. Okay. So a lot of firms track a lot of different things. But the truth is that it's really hard to allocate money, especially the more attorneys you have. And so there tends to be one or two that most people actually focus on because there's no perfect formula unless your firm is on a formula. So if you're tracking, all of these different metrics, such as originations, the relationship attorney, every firm has different names. Whatever it is that you're tracking, again, you want to know those by heart. And the ones that are most important are the ones that are actually given the most weight. Now, that is probably not formal. That's informal. But you want to know anecdotally what those are. Similarly, firms don't give a crap about non-billables. And I don't care if they claim to give you credit for them. I don't care if they tell you that they take them into consideration. Unless you are managing the firm or you have another role that is really high at the top, firms don't compensate on non-billables, okay? So walking in with all of your non-billables and walking in to explain how you've provided all of this non-billable help, it's probably not going to have any impact. If it does, it might be $1,000, maybe a little bit more. They don't care about that. So those numbers don't even matter. And that's going to be hard for some of you to hear, but that is the truth. And it is why I recorded the episode on non-billable purgatory. That was episode number 27. Now, I get that you generally need to have, especially if you're trying to make equity partnership, you generally need to show that you are involved in the firm itself, but the amount required to get you over that hurdle is not that much. And it could be that you really enjoy doing that. There is nothing wrong with that. Just know that you are trading money and promotions for enjoying the non-billable work, which is totally fine, right? Like you can make that decision. Just make sure that it's a decision you've thought through, as opposed to, again, being resentful and bitter when your firm doesn't compensate you for all the non-billable they ask you to do because you willingly do it and do a great job at it, right? So of course they're going to ask you to do it. Of course they're going to tell you it's important because it's benefiting them. But if you're not getting compensated for it, you need to consider, is that trade-off worth it? Okay. So you know your numbers inside and out, the ones that matter. The next part of that is, I said, your stories. You want to know the numbers and your stories. So those looking at your compensation, they see the numbers. I mean, basically, they see everybody's numbers. And so that is just naturally where they're going to go when it comes to making decisions. What they don't know is your stories behind those numbers. For firms that allow you to submit partner plans, partner reviews, a lot of that is to pull out your story. For firms that have meetings and interviews, that is to pull out your stories. For firms where your practice group leaders come in or others come in to share what happened in the group, it is to pull out those stories. But you cannot rely on others to tell the stories for you, and you cannot rely on them knowing or remembering your stories. That is up to you. That is up to you. So put your lawyer hat on. If you're a litigator, these are your persuasive arguments, whether it is in, your filings or in court in oral arguments. If you are a more transactional attorney, you still have phone calls with the other side where you're trying to, reach a deal or reach an agreement. That's what this is about. It's about knowing what is going to be most persuasive. You don't bring everything to the table, right? You don't bring all your arguments to the table. You bring the ones that you think are going to be the most effective. So you want to do that. You want to really map out, what are your stories, right? And you may be thinking, oh, I only need stories if my numbers aren't good. Not true. Let's say your numbers are good. You still want the stories that go with it. All right. So what I want you to do is just basically map out, almost in bullet point form, or maybe take some Post-it notes. Like, what are the stories? What are your wins for the year? What really contributed to those numbers? Did you get a great result for a client that is not reflected in those numbers? Did you work on a matter or a case that opened the door with a new client that now provides a ton of potential for the future? Was it a collaborative effort where you really worked with an industry team and you went out as a group to get it together and you all shared credit? What are your stories? Then you want to pick and choose the stories that are going to be most effective and persuasive. So first you brainstorm all the stories that go with those numbers, and then you pick the ones that will be most effective. And by the way, that is based on who is your judge, who is your opposing counsel, who is on your comp and your management committee that will be making these decisions. If your firm claims that they're really going to be rewarding client industries, if they're really going to be rewarding splitting credit, then that's a story that you want to tell. If your firm says that they care about those things, but they don't ever compensate on those things, then that's not the story you want to tell, right? This is why the informal piece is important. And it's why, if you've got an open system, looking at the numbers, that's important, because you can start to look for themes for the people that made more that you would think otherwise wouldn't. There's probably some common denominators and their stories are aligned, and you want to pick up on those stories and make sure that you can come up with your own that fit within that. Now, even if you had an off year, you still want the stories, and you're not going to go in and say, okay, I know this isn't going to go well, and I'm just going to hope they don't fire me, right? No, I know that's where you guys go, because we all think that we're frauds. And so we're always thinking I'm just lucky that I'm here and that they've not let me go. No, go in with confidence. It's going to help you out. You have to advocate for yourself. So in the same sense, if you had a client that did not have the best facts, that did not have the best case, or that's not on the best side of the deal, it doesn't mean that you're like, well, we'll do the best we can. No, you get creative and you really think through, like, how am I going to put our best foot forward, even if we know we can't get it all because we don't have great facts, but how can we make sure that we get the best possible outcome? That's the hat you need to put on when you're working through your numbers and your stories. Okay, so here's the next point. Implicit bias is real, 100% real in every way imaginable, because this is just the way that we work as humans. It's not intentional, it's implicit. We tend to like the people that look like us and act like us. So if I'm on the comp committee or if I'm on the management team, I'm going to probably recommend more compensation for the people who have the types of clients or the work ethic or the numbers or the stories that are the same as mine. And that is not intentional. It's just human behavior. It's also human behavior to want to look out for your friends. So when someone had a tough year and they're friends and you really like them, you tend to give them more leeway. And if there's someone that you don't like or you don't know, you don't go out on a limb and you don't take care of them in the same way. And again, this may not be something that someone's actually thinking through, like, oh, I like this person, or I don't like this person, or I don't know this person. It's just when you're looking at all of that data and you're really trying to be a good steward and split up the pie in a fair and even way, you are naturally going to have implicit bias in making decisions for your friends and against people that you don't know, or that don't act and perform the same way you do, because it's, kind of a threat. If you do things totally different, then it means, well, if we're going to start compensating that, then what I'm doing is not compensated as well. Now, what we know is there can be many different ways to compensate someone. But again, human behavior, implicit bias is going to say that the people making the decisions are not going to get it right, because they're humans and they're going to do things that support their way of life and support the people that they know and like. So even if you had amazing numbers, or even if you think that you've got a great story, it is up to you to make sure that you're combating the implicit bias. Now, it doesn't mean that you can totally make it go away, right? But you do have the ability to address it on the front end. And I'm not saying you walk in or you go talk to somebody about the implicit bias that is there. There's a lot of great research going on related to parity and comp. Leave that to the organizations and associations and researchers doing that. What I'm talking about is taking responsibility for making sure you have those relationships, for taking responsibility for speaking to, and this is whether it's in writing or, in a conversation, to the person that you're talking to in a way that is going to resonate with them, right? Now, should you have to do this? No, but this is life, and you're a great lawyer, which means you know how to do this. You do it every day with opposing counsel. You do it every day with your clients in the courts. Okay? It's not manipulation. It's just giving them what they need in a way that is more likely going to help you out. So you want to think through it from the lens of the people making the decisions, and you want to try to figure out, where are you similar and where can they see themselves in you? Okay. How can you tell a story or get numbers in front of them in a way that makes them feel good about themselves? And I know that sounds really weird, but that's what you want to do if you want a great comp for you. They're going to, again, unconsciously step up to the plate and go to bat for you if they see themselves in you, and if they've heard you tell stories or explain your numbers in a way that resonates with them. Okay. Next point, be prepared. Okay. This is trial. This is the closing day. You got to bring your best. So if that is a written document that you have to submit, if it is a formal interview or if it is informal conversations because they tell you that there's nothing you can do or say, there always is, be prepared. Don't wing it. Have your numbers, have your stories, and I highly encourage you to put it in a visual presentation. And even if people tell you no one does that at our firm, you should still do it. It's going to make you stand out. It's going to allow you to turn something in that makes sense of what you're saying. Whether it is pie charts, whether it is bullet points, whether it is slides from a PowerPoint presentation. Think about it like a pitch, right? Think about it like from an RFP perspective. You want to put something in front of them that is a snapshot of your story in a way that looks like you totally have your crap together, right? It means I take my comp seriously and I expect you to take my comp seriously. And it means I am prepared. And when you come back with a number that doesn't match what I have told you, I'm going to be upset. They need to know that. Not that you're saying that, but that's what this visual presentation is going to do for them. And 3, you're making their job easier. It's really hard to split up that pie and sort through things. And so when you show up and you've given something to them that makes it very easy for them to say yes to you, that's what you want to do, okay? And if this means, hiring someone to help you on this, recruiting your, child to help you with the graphics one night, do that. It could be that again, if you've got great contacts with your admin, it could be that you have an assistant that can help. It could be that you have someone in marketing or business development that can help, or someone on your practice management team, or even your diversity team. They want to see you succeed. They want to help you if you've got those relationships. So go to them and ask for support. If you can't get that within your firm, again, you might want to hire someone to help you do that. Or again, you might want to persuade a friend or a child that is really good at the graphic piece to help you out. Treat it the same way you would an interview or an RFP or closing arguments of a trial. Be prepared. Okay. And then my last point, although honestly I've already covered it a few different times, is to focus on what they care about. Focus on what they want. And that's not about giving into a system that you hate. It's about putting your best foot forward and making sure that you're setting yourself up for success, that you're going to get the best possible outcome. So they may still screw up your comp and you may not be happy with it, but you at least know you did everything possible to influence it in a way that is going to support you. Do not assume that people will just take care of you. Do not assume that if you hit certain numbers that they're just going to compensate you appropriately. They're having to consider a lot of different factors. And when people come in, and a lot of time men, they will come in and they are very argumentative and forceful as to why they need certain comp amounts. And women come in and they don't. Firms don't want attorneys to be upset, and they assume that you are not going to be upset. Of course, you're leaving in droves, but they don't make the connection because despite being smart people, they're not that smart. So don't assume that they're going to take care of you. Don't assume that they're going to know your numbers, your stories, any of that. You need to focus on what they care about and take as much responsibility as possible in putting forth the information that they need to compensate you well. So don't show up and talk about all of your non-billables and all of your committee work. Don't show up and talk about all of your random business development efforts. I went to this conference and I went to that conference and I did this, initiative thing and this, I participated on this industry team. Basically, that all that tells them is that you can't actually produce work, right? So it's telling them that you're putting forth the effort, but you don't actually know how to convert it. And that message sends to them that you're never going to be a rainmaker and they're going to compensate you accordingly. If you can have a really strong story where you might mention your non-billable and committee work, but you just gloss over it because, yeah, of course you do that. But what they really want to hear and what you're happy to tell them is, here are my numbers and here are the efforts that I have been doing. And when you say it in a very clear and targeted way where there is truly a story behind it and they see that maybe you don't have efforts yet, your plan is so good that it's going to. right? They see the potential in you. And believe it or not, they will compensate you on potential because they see you as moving into that space and they don't want to lose you. If they don't think that you can actually ever become a rainmaker, you're just going to spend their dollars and their time doing a bunch of different things that don't pay off in the end, they'll also compensate you less. Again, this kind of goes back to implicit bias, but focus on what they care about. And as you're doing this work, you say, oh crap, everything that they actually care about are things that I don't care about, or I don't have the numbers, I don't know how to turn it into that, or I don't want to. Then that just gives you information that it's time to leave that firm and go somewhere else, or that it's time for 2019 to be a year where you really get your stuff together so that you can really get the comp and the promotion that you want for 2020. Okay. So you're not going to spend another year doing things that they don't care about. All right. So those are my tips on compensation. I'm going to put this in a downloadable checklist, just some notes, so that if you've been listening and you're like, I really want that in written form, you can go to hustleandflowpodcast.com/95 and you'll get that free download. If you're on the email list, you will receive it in your inbox today. Well, on Tuesday, depends on when you listen to the podcast. The day the podcast comes out, it will also be delivered to your inbox. And if you're not on my email list and you'd like to be, you can go grab that download. You'll get it for free, and then we'll add you to the list so that you get all of our free resources. So the comp discussion really relates to anyone and everyone that is a partner, but I do want to tell you that we have a mastermind that is starting in February for female partners in large law firms. And so if you are a female partner, or if you know of an amazing female partner in a law firm, I want you to consider applying or encouraging them to apply for this mastermind. So the mastermind concept is that we bring together an amazing group, a diverse group from different backgrounds, different practice areas, different cities, different firms, so that you truly have this trusted board of advisors that can help you, that can support you, that can help you navigate firm politics, where you can bounce ideas off of each other and really support and encourage each other in a way that you sometimes don't get within your own firm or even organizations outside of that, because we don't always know who to trust. And sometimes we don't share everything because we're comparing ourselves to others and worried that we're not measuring up. A mastermind is all about giving you the power to make confident decisions, to make bold moves, to really grow your book of business with a group that fully supports you and cheers you on, where you can show up and say anything and get great answers and feedback and advice. So the next mastermind is going to be 6 months, and we will be kicking that off in February. Applications are now open. We have started interviews. We make offers on a rolling basis because, again, we don't want the same city, the same practice areas, or competitors, direct competitors in the room. So again, that's why it's highly curated, and we do that on a rolling basis. We get great results for those that participate in the mastermind. The comments that we have received back from other partners who have participated in this from BigLaw, it's that they've never seen marketing and sales and business development discussed in this way before. Like, they've been through a lot of training, but they're like, this is totally different. You're talking about it in a totally different way, and I can actually do this. It's no longer scary. Like, I can go ask for the business. I know what my approach is. I no longer feel scattered. I have a plan and I know how to execute it. Their numbers go up. Their happiness actually goes up as well. Like, they're more satisfied at their firm because they feel like they're succeeding. So if you could really benefit from that, I highly encourage you to apply. If we think you're a good fit, we'll do that telephone interview to really make a decision. And of course, that gives you an opportunity to ask questions as well to see if it's something you do want to do. And then hopefully you'll get the offer and you will come join us, and you will love being around such a wonderful group of women to really help you go to the next level. So you can just go to legalmasterminds.com to learn more and to apply. Okay, go get your money, and I will talk to you next week. I am super excited to announce that the Life and Law Planner is officially here. It is more than just a calendar. It is a full planning system. If you want to take back your days, your weeks, your months, and your year, order your planner now. It will completely change your life and help you accomplish your biggest goals. There's only a limited quantity available, so go to lifeandlawplanner.com and order yours today.